Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to our truly global audience, and welcome to this session of Business Breathers, a live webinar series hosted by Goodman Group at Brock University. My name is Abdul Rahimi, and it's my pleasure to serve as the Director of Goodman Group in the Goodman School of Business. Goodman Group is a community-focused learning and development services provider that works to support professionals, businesses, and entrepreneurs pursuing growth through accredited professional development certificate programs, executive education, and startup support. It's my pleasure to welcome you all corners of the globe to today's session as you take a break with us by taking part in this webinar. This webinar series aims to provide 45-minute breathers filled with insightful discussions on timely topics that are relevant to the businesses and everyday lives led by our award-winning Brock University faculty and leading industry experts, encouraging thoughtful debates and keeping us feeling connected all together as we get through this. This webinar series is hosted on Wednesdays from 11 to 11:45. In a moment, I will hand the screen over to today's presenter, and that is Dr. Samir Trabelsi. But for a moment, we'll just take a bit of a pause and go through the format for those who may be joining us for the first time, especially. Dr. Trabelsi will speak for about 30 minutes on the topic of board of directors in the aftermath of COVID-19, and then we'll spend some time answering your questions. And we have received a number of questions as part of the registration process. And we look forward to seeing even more of your questions as the live session proceeds. So the chat feature for the live session is open now, and Sultana is there and moderating your questions. So feel free to type those in there as we go through. We're also open to receiving your questions as part of, as you tweet them live. So feel free to add us at tweet live at GUC Goodman Group, all one word. At the end of the webinar, I'll provide details on how you can access today's webinar recordings as well. Okay, without further ado, it is my distinct pleasure to introduce today's webinar lead, and that is Professor Samir Trabelsi, who is a professor of accounting and governance at the Goodman School of Business. He holds a PhD in accounting and CPA Ontario designation. He has taught courses in corporate governance, external reporting, and research methodology. Dr. Trabelsi's extensive experience stems across industry and academia, and he has practiced public accounting at KPMG in Tunisia. Dr. Trabelsi's research interests are around corporate governance, sustainability, corporate corruption, and risk management. He is an award-winning researcher, and his research is funded by Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council of Canada, as well as other agencies. He has won the Best Paper Award at several conferences, and he has been the recipient of Brock University's Award for Excellence in Teaching, as well as the Departmental Research of the Year Award on a number of occasions. Without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to today's presenter, Samir. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Abdul. Good morning for those who are in Canada. Good afternoon or good evening for those who are in a different time zone. Welcome to the webinar, Boards in the Aftermath of Coronavirus. Thank you all, the more than 200 participants, for taking the time out of your busy schedule, or it is evening, family time, and for being here today. My name is Samir Trabelsi. I'm a professor of accounting and governance at the Goodman School of Business at Brock University. I have spent almost a decade in looking at how good governance and how successful board of directors are key for, scarce resources, but for scarce resources optimal allocation, for organization survival, in fact, even for country survival, and for good crisis management. As you can see from these first slides, Winston Churchill said, this is not the end, It is not even the beginning of the end, but it's perhaps the end of the beginning. Coronavirus is here. It's going to be, and we are talking about the new normal. Now, the other code that I'm going to base my talk on today is I am seeing that a lot of call for social responsibility, for which is important, but I believe that in life and death matter, such as COVID-19 pandemic, a focus on financial matters, and if we talk about financial matters, it could be misplaced. But, for the many countries where there is poor, the financial impact of COVID-19 can be devastating and far more immediate. And the board role is key. So my talk today is going to be around three things. I'm going to describe the background, why I have chosen a second webinar after the first one when I looked at is COVID-19, it's a crisis in governance or it's a good crisis for governance. Today I'm taking more kind of a narrow focus on one of the governance mechanisms, which is the board of directors. Why I'm doing that, I'll explain later. Then I'm going to look for a board model that look at the composition, characteristics, structure, and process. If we want to assess board pre-COVID-19, we need what we call a critical look at this board. Then I'll go into coronavirus, to the pandemic, and explain how this is a black swan, and how that being a black swan, there is an impact on two major duties of each and every board member, no matter it is for profit, a public firm, or a not-for-profit. Like I'm a big fan of soccer, it could be a soccer association. Then I look at the board in the aftermath of coronavirus, and I'll distinguish between public and private firm. Now, why I'm looking at the board of directors during and post COVID-19. Coronavirus pandemic is, a crucial moment for management teams and their board of directors. In fact, company should respond in real time to rapidly shifting challenges while accelerating long-term strategy will most likely stand as a beacon on the battered landscape of the post-crisis economy. Now, boards are in a unique position to help management team achieve this kind of balancing act. How? By focusing on immediate fundamentals while keeping their eye on the horizon. Because, with COVID-19, and excuse my accounting background, going concern is compromised for many organizations. Now, being removed from the day-to-day operation, this is what's good about being a board of director member. Board of director can help, and I'm talking about help here, can help management team battling in the fog of war to pinpoint, because they look at the organization from 36,000 feet. They can help the management team battling in the fog of war to pinpoint the critical factor for survival, while uncovering through it's a crisis, but this crisis offers opportunities. And board should mentor CEOs and help them identify the opportunity that will allow organization to emerge stronger and kind of reshape the world. Now, not only that, going back to going back to the West Churchill Code, this is just the end of the beginning. So, and to be optimistic, we are seeing some faint sign of progress in the struggle to contain the pandemic. Now it is the time, it is likely, never more important than now, for board of directors and executive management team to tackle the right questions and jointly guide their organization towards the next normal. And towards the end of my conclusion, I'll be speculating what will be this next normal is. Okay. Now let's see at the board of directors pre-COVID-19. In 2019, PwC did a survey, and as you can see, this is before the coronavirus. Okay. And as you can see, 49% of directors give their board member a failing grade. Okay. 43% of directors say it is difficult to voice a disseminating viewpoint in the boardroom. This is before COVID-19. Okay. 83% think that gender diversity is important, but the public debate, the debate among governance professionals leans toward more tokenism. And 86% think that investors devote too many attention to environmental and sustainability. But however, the board has a strong, and they don't think that they don't have a strong understanding of ESG issues. Okay, so this is governance pre-COVID-19. Okay, now coronavirus is definitely a black swan. What is the main feature of a black swan? These are events that are unforeseen or unpredictable and that have extreme consequences. They have three main characteristics. Okay, they're surprising, they happen in a sudden, they fall outside the realm of usual expectation, they have major effect, and what's good is that with the benefit of hindsight, they are often rationalized. Now, in response of flatten the curve, we all have seen that government enforced border shutdown. The border, we are in Niagara Falls, so the borders are still closed. Travel restriction, quarantine in countries across the globe, and these did sparkle fear and impending economic crisis and a recession. COVID-19 implied a disruption of both the supply and demand. In fact, COVID-19 affected every aspect of the world economy. Now, director has a duty, there are two duties. They have fiduciary duty. The duty of care. You've got to be diligent in decision making. How I'm going to be diligent when I know I cannot forecast, there is high level of uncertainty. Avoiding self-dealing by using property or information for personal gain. And I'm going to mention again my colleague he used to be in accounting, then he moved to like organizational behavior, Professor Paul Dan, where he said law has loopholes. So conflict of interest are not only a matter of law, they are a matter of ethics and code of conduct. So as a board member, you have what we call a duty of care, and then a duty of loyalty. Now, in principle, in the service, nothing really has changed regarding director responsibility to discharge their fiduciary duty. Okay? However, given the implication of COVID-19, director must be well informed and knowledgeable about facts and circumstances surrounding the company. When the CEO comes for board presentation, they need to weigh the benefit of opening a business against the potential cost of resuming operation. Be also well informed about the company potential need for additional financing and assess COVID-19 conceivable impact on company business and its ability to adequately generate revenue. Now, government across the globe, they put together stimulus packages. The board of directors need to evaluate that and see how these stimulus will benefit the company financial position. Now, of course, with COVID-19, it triggered an unprecedented supply and demand disruption. And organizations are facing some financial distress that could imply insolvency. I'm pretty sure that many directors that are joining us today, they're asking question, how the sudden change in financial health impact my fiduciary duty? If you happen to be in an organization that is unhealthy or there is financial difficulty, you should be aware of the following. Your fiduciary duty do not change. But remember, you do not have a duty to shut down the insolvent corporation. Number one, we all need to save jobs. And more importantly, director of insolvent company, they do not owe fiduciary duty to creditors. Okay? Creditor might not bring direct claim against the director for breach of fiduciary duty. So the bottom line is director make decisions that benefit the corporation. Now, let me, before I proceed with explaining boards in the aftermath of COVID-19, go over the model of board attributes and roles. So basically what we see here, we always observe the outcome of any organization. And that outcome depends on whether the board successfully fulfilled its service strategy oversight. Listen, we're not going to be dreaming about it. If there is any weaknesses in the composition, characteristics of board member, structure of the board, or the decision-making process in the board, of course, the outcome is not going to be a positive outcome. So during COVID-19, it is a time to reflect on each of these components and see whether the boards did adjust these four attributes. Of course, these four components are sensitive to some external contingencies. For example, legal requirement, the industry organization is operating in, the competition in the market, and also internal contingency. So we need to be pragmatic when we look at these four attributes. Okay? Now, let's have a look at these four attributes for public firm. Now, these are the key area of board focus during and post-COVID-19. First and foremost, board need to focus on the safety and well-being of company employees. Then there should be a focus on financial risks and scenario planning, duration and severity, and longer-term dislocation. Board members also need to understand the key operation risks, especially the supply chain, labor and technology capability, and any related scenario planning to maintain operation. The bottom line is ensure that the board is staying up to date of the company response to the crisis and assess any financial reporting and disclosure impact on that. I'm going to go now to the first big component of board attributes, which is board composition. You know, this pandemic has placed a premium on busy director and a display on humanity. According to Mr. Louis Pentland, an executive at PayPal and a non-executive director of Hitachi, yes, given what happened in China, board of director and executive could have anticipated the pandemic. Now, to the question, would the prospect of a global shutdown have been taken seriously enough to create what we call a full playbook for pandemic? Is Professor Trabelsi today out? I mean, at the end of my webinar, I'm going to give you a full playbook. The answer is definitely no. But the truth and the reality is, during COVID-19, company directors have scrambled to respond to coronavirus and its consequences. You know, this crisis is a testing of the resilience of the G component in the ESG triad. Board handle normal business risk through ordinary process such as audit, company-specific risk, through business continuity programs and contingency planning. It's very sad that few, if any, had prepared a plan for the first shockwave of global pandemic, whose impact on business has outweighed the disruption of the 9/11 terrorist attacks or the 2008 financial crisis. This crisis also sent companies back to their core principle, because we always look for profit maximization. Now, there is another component that the board of directors in its composition should pay attention to: empathy and the humanitarian element of leadership plays an important role in this crisis. In fact, faced with an emergency, there is simply no time to assemble what we call the ideal board. In fact, Mr. Peter Bonfield, the chair of NXP Semiconductors, argued that when push comes to shove, your board culture and style can sort out companies who do well from those who falter or fail. Now, you know, when I teach my students, I always tell them, listen, you know, busy boards, if you're sitting on mini boards, that's bad. And my student, and by the way, I thank them because part of this presentation, I am grateful to the student I taught this semester because we had a good discussion. And the presentation I'm giving today is based on my Master of Accounting student feedback and input during our corporate governance class discussion. So they argue with me, Professor, how many board seats are too many? And, you know, if you're too busy, it means you're too good. And I can tell you the reason that that are concerned about overboarding is exactly time like this. You know, it may be easy to juggle multiple boards when times are going well, but what happens when too many board seats and other commitments get in the way? You know, when you hit a crisis like right now, you don't have that well of experience that says, okay, when 9/11 came around or the financial crisis, this is what we did. However, and this is my belief, there is a recent working paper that I found out 2 weeks ago. It's published in April 2020, and across the year, they looked at the contribution of director to firm resilience. And they assess the relative importance of advisory and oversight role at a time of crisis. Guess what they find? They find board independence and the presence of director with industry expertise exacerbate the negative share price effect. Whereas the converse is true for director business and board side. These, they are counterintuitive against all the finding in governance, And, these findings imply that in time of crisis, advice-oriented boards fare better than monitoring-oriented boards. Now, the second big category is board characteristics. When the financial crisis, when COVID-19 hit, I said, my God, it looks like board and executive, they may go off in a different direction. The truth is, board have also valued a diverse range of voices, contributing to scenario planning as the crisis has evolved. That's what I have seen in the, for instance, some company like in Sweden, they have emphasized the importance of stakeholder coordination and transparency that involve both shareholders, employee, and regulator. I think hearing a different opinion in the boardroom is key. Now we look for director with international background, like director with knowledge of how Asia tackled the beginning of the crisis, has offered their advice to those in Europe or in the US, where the pandemic struck later. Board also may seek new expertise. Perhaps among the one that come top of the list, epidemiologists and disease model, who have come to the force. Now, there is the former president of the European Corporate Governance Institute, Mr. Guy Job. He cautioned us against it. He said, wait a minute. Introducing, sometimes if you do this, you introduce a risk of unintended complacency. Because as you see, as soon as you have an expert on cyber or actual science, the rest of the board will switch off. Board structure. I think COVID-19 and after COVID-19, board might have to rethink their regular functionalities and adopt a new structure and meeting and board composition. Some committee might have to meet with this committee, even though they do not have done so in the past. Directors who are not part of some board committee may have to attend meeting, because now you've got to be informed. You've got to think outside the box, outside of your area of expertise. Being accounting, audit committee should reevaluate whether management has taken adequate measures to address the changing business environment. What risk has arisen? Internal auditor, do they adjust their plan to consider new issue? Also evaluate action taken by external auditor to address auditors, including obtaining evidence and considering change in assessed materiality and going concern. COVID-19, and this is has been reported in the business press, has left businesses under pressure to give full account on how the pandemic will affect them. In fact, there is company watchdog in United Kingdom are pushing auditor to give harder look at going concern status. According to a senior auditor at PwC, he said, we are having challenging conversation with company directors. When it comes to adding new committee to the structure of the board, company may consider striking separate coronavirus or crisis committee. And this committee will report to the board of directors in order to have a better monitoring. This committee should be also tasked to assess the short-term and long-term risk posed by this pandemic. Now, regarding the decision-making process, there is kind of temporary succession planning becomes more relevant than any time before. The first candidate is finance chief is more likely to temporarily fill in the position of CEO or chairman. Even though most boards already have an emergency succession plan, only few were prepared for situations like a rapidly spreading pandemic. I know of an airline company where the CEO was kicked off, and then it took the Minister of Transportation to appoint an interim manager or to order the board to vote on that CEO. That's not good practice of governance. So company must prepare for scenario where the emerging successor must be replaced too. I'm teaching my class online and everybody's doing so. Because board meeting now goes virtual, 76% of board surveyed, they said they're spending more time on board responsibility. And about 30% even say they're spending twice as much as or more. 93%, they say that both the level of director engagement and their own personal engagement is good or excellent. In this pandemic, it looks like director may feel more empowered to speak up. The board process, and given that what's going on, executives who are usually compensated with incentive pay and performance bonus may see a sharp fall in their paycheck, and this is the job of the board. Starting with board member compensation to executive compensation to dividend policy. The board need to be very clear around this and not engaging in like cheap talk. Sorry. The National Association of Corporate Directors did a survey. 30% of directors said their company have delayed a planned investment. And more directors are expected to turn their focus from immediate concern like workplace safety to financial survivors. So here, the implication of this is we need to balance these non-financial and financial. Boards should create a sustainable, long-term competitive advantage that can be achieved only with long-term strategic horizon. It's time now for the board to focus on the long term and ensure that we have enough expertise from different industry. Board also should have a regular strategic horizon meeting to define what is it a long-term horizon mean for them. There is a concern that you can see that and the fear that corporate board, because of this survival issue, they may ditch stakeholder concern. However, company need government assistance during the crisis they need to remember all this bailout you're getting are from the taxpayer money. So the balance between the shareholder and stakeholder is very important. Also, when it comes to the oversight, board should be aware of any change in disclosure requirement and other regulatory obligation. They need to make sure with the CEO to discuss how we can access the supports, how to use the benefit we received, and assess the impact on the strategy, business model, and key performance indicator. Finally, board also need to prepare for the next crisis. Forward-looking boards should actively prepare themselves before the next crisis hit. And all the economists, they say that it's going to be a W recovery shape. The board need to perform an in-depth review of responses taken, including both the response process and the substance of the response. Create an updated response plan considering recent experiences and seek a second opinion. Now, what happened for the not-for-profit organization? The Institute of Corporate Directors states that many charity and not-for-profit organizations have had to delay fundraising due to the pandemic. Not-for-profits of all sizes have had to cancel fundraiser and lost a lot of revenue, event revenue. I think not-for-profit, like board meeting or annual meeting of shareholder, they should consider holding virtual fundraising events. While on one hand, the supply of funds has plummeted, on the other hand, the demand for service such as food bank has risen. In fact, Fine Arts Museum of San Francisco, which is governed by 3 nonprofit boards, faces a projected losses of $9 million. This decline in fundraising will not only affect performance targets of directors of charities, but will also result in lesser help going around during the pandemic. I always say to any not-for-profit organization, we really need exceptional board governance more than ever, especially for the not-for-profit. The board and the chief executive are interdependent and essential to your organization during this time. It is now the time to create this so you can handle the inevitable challenges that will arise during this time. In fact, boards and CEO are engaging in all kinds of strategic thinking right now about the program and processes and working to ensure they are fulfilling their mission. They also should be using this time as an opportunity to set a priority. Not-for-profit organization cannot maintain all the programs. Also, board members that are serving as a volunteer, they are called to think about their non-for-profit while balancing their personal or belief. And for board member, this may mean that you're going to be understanding about the fact that your favorite program or service may have to be discontinued. And being okay with that, because that's what is best for the organization. In conclusion, COVID-19 and its consequences has offered a great opportunity to test the way different directors can help organization, whether it is for profit or not for profit. If this trend continue, boards will need to start asking, what would we do in the 5 years? I think this was a hard question to answer even before the pandemic. Now it looks even harder. But there is one thing is sure. The next normal board of directors cannot be based on just regulation. And here I can call on the Canadian principle-based board of director guideline. The comply or explain approach, the flexible approach, is going to enable board to help the CEO overcome the challenge of coronavirus. And thank you so much for your attention.
Samir, thank you very much for that insightful conversation on the board of directors. We've received quite a number of questions and so little time left to address them. Although there are a number of questions that were raised that you have addressed as well. So for those that we may not get time to, we'll look to address those after the session as well. So here's the first one. Are you seeing any fundamental weaknesses in the current structure when it comes to board governance? And then the next question is related to this. I'll give you that as well. Do you see COVID, the pandemic era, as a mere catalyst expediting the incremental implementation of the long overdue changes? Or do you see this more as an opportunity to revolutionize and a wholesome overhaul of the governance structure?
I think the major weaknesses in board structure, composition, characteristics, and process is driven. Board of directors are prisoners of compliance. The day we free up board member of this compliance prison, they're going to do a good job. Because board members, if they're well trained and they care about the society, and pandemics, they show we all care. It's not because of the regulation we care, because we are socially responsible. So major weaknesses in the board of is this pure legal viewpoint of the board. It's this legalistic approach of board of directors. I know in many countries, the only way they do board of director governance is new law. The only way we're going to make board is through regulation. I think opposite. If you want to free up board member, give incentives. And director, if they're well trained and they're given clear tasks, they're going to be up to the challenge.
Excellent, thank you. Here's one closer to home. What are the pillars of good governance in educational institutions, in your view?
In not-for-profit, most universities are not-for-profit.
Yeah.
And most universities are facing very challenging time. So, and really, God bless board of directors of most universities across the globe, and most deans and presidents across the globe, because it's not easy. Now, there is kind of balance, excellence in education and teaching, but also we don't want to run in deficit. And I think key to university is the background of university board members. University board members need to include board members, well trained of course, but with a strong belief that student success is in the bottom of their heart. The moment you have that, you're going to get those boards. We're going to help fundraising. It's going to help also maintain excellence and giving resources to faculty and staff to offer good teaching and good mentoring and good training. Of course, the structure, composition, and process are very important, but COVID-19 from a university board governance is the background of each and every board members. They're key to the financial health of any university.
Great, thank you for that. Cognizant of time, we've got a couple of other questions that are here. There's one around non-governance cost to societies and legal ramifications in a Lebanese environment, and what will be the new normal post-COVID. I think you answered that. The other question is, how does the board measure performance of a CEO or management during COVID-19? These are the, and there are three other questions as well, other than those three that we're probably not going to have time to address at this point. But I thank all of our audience for providing those questions. So we will endeavor to answer those outside of this session via email. And also, I want to take this opportunity to thank you, Samir, for your insightful talk around the area of board of governance.
Can you allow me to really say a few final comments? I'm really thankful. I'm really thankful to my Master of Accounting and Professional Master of Accounting student at Brock University, to two of my students, Talha, Afzal, and Maruf. Please, we have a lot of talents at Brock, and if you are interviewing any of them, you are having having a great talent there. Give him the job. Thank you.
Thank you, Talha, and thank you, Maruf, for your contribution in making this a success as well. Well, that is all that we have time for today. Thank you so very much again, Samir, for your contribution here as part of this. In the coming days, our audience, you will see an email that will be in your inbox that will provide you with access to recording for this session. And I want to take this opportunity to thank you so very much for taking the time out of your busy schedule, echoing what Dr. Trabelsi said, for joining us during this live session, but also being able to view the recording of the session once available later. So keep an eye out for that in your inbox coming soon. I also quickly want to touch on the next content of the next slide, which is around the non-profit leadership certificate program, something that Dr. Trabelsi touched on in his towards the end of his presentation, board of governance and its impact on nonprofit. Well, if you would like to hear more and be able to earn your certificate in nonprofit leadership, feel free to reach out to us, to myself or a member of my team here at Goodman Group, at Goodman Group at brocku.ca, or you may go online and seek further information there where registration is open. We have had great demand for this. We have already seen a number of seats filled. We have put a cap on the number of available seats because we want to preserve the high quality of the program that we have. All of the sessions are instructor-led, and they will be using a similar format, but there will be orientations and other elements in place to allow for overcoming the technology barriers and focusing on the content and your education and information gathering once we go like that. So that is available for you to reserve your seats as we go through. And I would encourage you to do those. Seats are limited and they will be assigned on a first come, first serve basis. Next week, on the topic of business breeders, we will be hearing from President and Vice Chancellor of Brock University, that's Dr. Gerben Fearon, and his talk will focus on corporate social responsibility in the era of Black Lives Matter. I encourage you all to join us for that. We have already had over 200 registrants for that session. So we were looking to increase the number of folks that could join the live session. So feel free to register for that in the usual manner. And that is next week, 29th of July at 11 again. Until then, I wish you farewell, wherever you are from all corners of the globe. Stay well and stay safe. Thank you.